Hi YouTube, Art here again with another video. The content on the channel is going to start ramping up a little bit. Verdansk is coming back on Thursday. I'll be live testing all of that over on Twitch and here on YouTube. And I am just so stoked to get back to the best map and the first map that I ever played on Warzone. Today we got the Season 3 patch notes, which surprisingly covered a lot of audio changes coming to Season 3 and the new map. So in today's video, we're going to cover all those. I'm going to share some of my thoughts about what the cryptic things that they're saying could mean and what to expect moving forward. If you're looking for coverage about the movement changes, the buffs, the nerfs, and the changes to equipment, go check out JGod or Repulse's channels. We're just going to jump right into the audio stuff and jump into the details there. They start with the headline Classic under audio. They're bringing back the classic cinematic audio for the infill, for the exfil, for the gulag. They're bringing back the original music, which I have turned off all the time, and most of you do too, probably. The original announcer, which is going to feel super nostalgic. And the first big one for me is hit markers. In my opinion, the original hit markers from Warzone 1 were so satisfying and so clean and clear. Hopefully we get the original headshot sound and the original down sound as well, because that's just going to be nostalgic as all get out. I also think the older sound effects were less cluttery. One of the tips I was going to include that was originally an Iceman Isaac tip moving forward was to turn off your hit markers because they just sound really crowded. And all the testing that I've done, I followed Isaac's advice. I turned off the hit markers and it is a lot clearer, especially when you hear somebody running up on you while you're shooting. Maybe this will change with the OG hit markers coming back. I do think they're a little bit cleaner. This includes armor and armor breaks. So all of those sounds are going to be OG. They're going to be a lot cleaner in my opinion. The death's door sound, which is when you become 1E in game and the blood in your head kind of pulses. So that's going to go back to the OG sound, which I can't recall off the top of my head, but I'd imagine it's going to be less cluttered because with MW2, they just introduced a lot of immersive stuff that didn't really feel right in the game. So these reversions are going to be really great. Now, the big one everybody's talking about is footstep recordings. And I want to emphasize here, they are footstep recordings. I was in a lot of chats today watching and seeing what everybody was talking about with the patch notes, and everyone's saying, oh, the OG audio is back. We're getting Verdansk audio back. As we'll get into it lower down, I don't think the Verdansk audio is back. I think they're bringing back the original sounds of footsteps from the original game, but they're applying them to the new system that we have with the BO6 engine. We'll get into that more later, but this just kind of feels, somebody said it in chat earlier, it feels like a paint job for the BO6 audio. So we'll have to wait and see, but they are bringing back that OG footstep recording. Loot chests. This is a big one. If you didn't see on Twitter, they are doing a promotion where they have chests in Chicago, London, and LA, and they are emitting that low hum. We have a kind of ringing, shiny chest sound right now, and it makes it hard to place, and it also can be super overbearing if you're running Loudness EQ or My Tune. So hopefully this hum becomes less overbearing and easier to place in the map. I do foresee there might be a small problem emphasizing footstep cues with the tune and the loot chest because they're going to kind of overlap a little bit, but we'll have to test and wait and see. Like I said, I'll be live on Thursday over on Twitch and here on YouTube testing all of this stuff live. Next are buy station sounds. Those are going back to the OG sounds. Again, that's something that I can't recall off the top of my head, but it's going to be cool to have all those old sounds back. Contracts, the little sounds that they make sitting there, they're also going to be the old tablets, also going to be super nostalgia. Obviously, they're just nostalgia farming. And you know what? I'm all here for it. And lastly, UI sounds. Pinging, splashes, which I don't really know what they are off the top of my head, and the progression sounds are going to be all of the OG sounds. So like I said, this nostalgia farming is going to be really, really cool to hear, and it's cheesy, but I'm all here for it. The adjustment section of the audio patch notes is definitely the most confusing and convoluted, but also the most interesting to me. The first section, they're talking about occlusion and reverb. If you don't remember, occlusion is how audio propagates through a space, how it bounces off different materials, how it travels through walls or around walls. So what they're talking about here is they're saying they're transitioned from an older raycasted system to a newer Microsoft Triton acoustic audio. And I think what they're talking about here is they're talking about the original state of Verdansk. So Verdansk, when it left us back in 2021, it was using a raycasted, whatever that means, occlusion system. Now they're taking the old map and they're updating it to the BO6 system, which uses Microsoft's tools. If you remember back to before the Black Ops 6 release in October, they dropped a bunch of blogs teasing the features coming to the game. One of them was all about the audio features that they were adding to the game. We did a whole video about it. And if you scroll down a little bit and you look below some of this information, they have a bit about Project Acoustics, taking spatial reverb to the next level. And you read through it and you see here that they're talking about Microsoft's Project Acoustics. Well, that's not quite Microsoft Triton, now is it? Well, I did some more digging and the findings were pretty interesting. I have pulled up here the Microsoft research page about Project Titan. It has all kinds of different graphs about where the listener is placed, the initial loudness, decay time, reflections. They talk about obstruction, occlusion, reverb, all of these different things. And I wanted to see if this Project Triton was the same thing as the Microsoft Project Acoustics that they mentioned in the Black Ops 6 blog that came out before the game came out. If you scroll down here, Project Acoustics, this is part of Project Acoustics. Project Triton is one piece of Project Acoustics. In fact, if you click through one of those links on the Microsoft research page, it takes you to this GitHub page, which is a public archive of the Project Acoustics from Microsoft. Why is this interesting? Well, if you scroll down, you can see that it says Microsoft Project Acoustics right here, and part of Project Acoustics is Triton. So in my mind, this supports my theory that they're taking Verdansk from the old audio state that it was in and moving it onto the Black Ops 6 reverb and occlusion system that they introduced and that they talked about in that original blog. They go on to say that they've improved sound behavior around corners and surfaces and custom-tuned data specifically optimized for Call of Duty Warzone. What I think's going on here is they're doing a little bit of salesmanship. They've taken the original footstep recordings from MW19 Warzone and applied it to the Microsoft Triton or Project Acoustics from the original blog system and maybe made some fine-tuning for Warzone. They're seeming to separate Warzone from multiplayer more and more, both in movement changes, in meta changes with guns, and now in some of the sound ways. We'll have to wait and see if they're just hamming it up here to make it seem like they've done more than they actually have, but it does seem like we're just getting a paint job, as that chatter said, of Black Ops 6 audio engine with MW19 footstep sounds. I think some similar salesmanship is going on with the sound modifier section. They say they adopted a new procedural audio technology developed by Treyarch, that's important here in a second, that dynamically adjusts sounds based on gameplay elements, entity speed, angle, elevation. If we go back to the audio blog originally posted in October, there's another section called live mixing, prioritizing the most important sounds. In here, they're talking about a new priority system that assigns dynamic priority number to every single sound, which can then be adjusted live in the entire mix. The sound of enemies moving toward you, for example, is emphasized more than the sound of teammates at your back. Now, why is this important? Well, we're reading a blog that was published by Treyarch. In the patch notes, they're talking about how they're applying a new priority system to Verdansk that is a feature developed by Treyarch. So again, I think we're in a situation where they're just hamming it up, selling it up a little bit. They're talking about how MW19 was X and they're making it Y on the BO6 engine. So they're taking what used to be and converting it to the new BO6 engine. If we go back to the patch notes, you can see audio technology developed by Treyarch that dynamically adjusts sounds based on gameplay elements, entity speed, angle, elevation. So while I think there might be some modifications that they've made moving forward, I just think they bit off so much to chew with this whole Verdansk implementation that in this section, they're trying to make it sound like more than it is. And all they're referring to is the fact that we are not going to get the MW19 audio. We're going to get the MW19 sounds ported over to the BO6 audio system. There's a section called footsteps and ladders. And if you scroll through this, it looks like they're starting to separate the audio from BO6 multiplayer because they say unique tuning for Call of Duty Warzone footsteps separate from premium titles, introduced with MW3. That's really confusing and convoluted, but I wonder if they're going back to the kind of audio setup in terms of footsteps that they had in MW3, because there were times where they buffed footsteps, and at the end of MW3, even stock audio sounded really great. So this might actually be a meaningful change. Friendly teammates' footsteps reduced when positioned behind the player. I don't know how many times they said they've adjusted this. I've never really felt a big change in it. Hopefully this time it's meaningful. Footstep loudness dynamically scales with entity speed. That might be a modification that they've made, so hopefully it means if they're moving faster, you can hear more of them. I kind of feel like that's already in the game, so this kind of feels like somebody trying to make something old sound new. But again, we'll have to wait till Thursday to see what actually happens. Next is footstep pitches changed based on player's elevation. This already exists. If you hear somebody below you, the tonality of the steps is very different than when somebody's above you. Above you has a hollow sound, below you has a more thumpy sound. If you listen carefully on a good headset, you can clearly hear this difference. What did change is when they moved away from the reverb system at the beginning of BO6 till now, it was easier to tell actually with the reverb system where somebody was vertically, but it just made all other audio crap. So I am glad that they reverted that. These sound differences already existed, so this is kind of another ham up thing here. The big ones are ladder sounds amplified. That is a huge thing. I can hear ladders pretty clearly with the audio tune. Louder ladders are always welcome. The other big one is that they're boosting jumping, landing, and ceiling footstep cues. The big ones are jumping and landing. When somebody lands in with a parachute, if they cut it just right or if there's a lot of stuff going on, this footsteps or the landing sound was very, very quiet, and the jumping sound was very, very quiet as well. Amplifying those is just going to make the player much more aware, and I think it's a very good addition to the game. Cloth, gear, and mantling, I think, is probably the most important and most interesting section of these patch notes. Cloth and gear sounds are now distinctively tuned for Warzone, separate from premium titles. Increased clarity and volume of mantling and melee sounds, differentiating friendly and enemy movements. So the friendly and enemy movements thing, we'll have to wait and see. I don't think this has ever been successfully implemented in a way that I could tell, but the big one is the mantling. There have been many times, like in Old Town on that little ring, when people mantled up and I heard absolutely nothing because it was mantle, 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 and mantles have been silent for a very long time. So hopefully now we actually actually get an audio cue from somebody mantling, and again, lets the player be a little bit more aware. This supports it even more in the last item that they talk about, enhanced mantling audio to resemble footsteps for greater situational awareness. So hopefully that means now, instead of just the sound of cloth being thrown over something, you actually get a thump when somebody mantles. So the more audio cues, the better, whether it's for stock audio or the tune. This cloth gear mantling section is really promising to me. I'm really excited to test this section out. The next section, loot supply boxes. Everybody already knows about this. They are reverting the glowing, shimmering loot box sound that we got with MW2 Warzone, and they're bringing it back to the original MW19 Warzone, which was like a low hum. In my opinion, this was way better. It was way easier to locate where chests were, and I also think it's going to be better for the tune. I think they'll be less in your face. One of the biggest complaints that I've had with the tune for the longest time is, why are my boxes so loud? I think it'll still make the boxes loud, but that harsh shimmering will be gone. The only thing I'm a little worried about is that because it is a lower pitched sound on the loot supply boxes, that it's going to affect how clear footsteps can be brought up with the tune, but we'll have to wait and see. If my assumptions and my research about Project Triton and Project Acoustics are correct, which I think they are, I think what's going to happen is we're going to get Verdansk on the BO6 audio engine, albeit with all of the old Verdansk sounds, the old footstep sounds, the old armor breaks, all of that. I would love to see the squad wipe sound come back. I would love to see the original headshot sound come back. I would really like to see the old streak sounds come back, but we'll have to wait till Thursday and see what happens. If I were to suggest anything to get ahead for Verdansk, I would say go back to my Black Ops 6 audio guide, get all of that installed, set up, and configured so that when Verdansk drops and I play through it for the next couple days and I get that audio video out, it's going to start at the end of that Black Ops 6 guide, because I don't think there's going to be a huge overhaul to the audio system. If anything changes, make sure you follow me on Twitter because I will tweet about it there, but I do think we're going to stay on the Black Ops 6 engine with just some tweaked sounds, so there should be very minimal changes. Like I mentioned, I'll be live bright and early on the 3rd over on twitch.tv/art_is_war, and right here on YouTube as well. We'll be dropping into Verdansk, reliving all those old memories, but most importantly, testing the audio. I will put it through its paces, I will see what has changed, and as soon as I have that figured out, I will have the audio guide uploaded. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you know when I upload that video, and until the next video and over on the live stream, I'll catch y'all later. Peace.